awesome live stream hosted by your friend, your pal, Jerry Batista. And today I got an exciting little story for you guys. It's involving a piece of real estate that I own and love and will keep for a while. But I find myself having this conversation over and over again with a bunch of friends of mine. Whether I meet people from church or from school or from, just daily passing, the conversation ends up being somewhere around architecture and real estate. So I find myself, with people that are my age or, just kind of around my level here, buying their first piece of property or wanting to buy the first piece of property. And I always find myself talking about my first property that I bought. And I just find a lot of, I would say, use of knowing some of this information. I think I helped a lot of people gain some confidence in buying their first house. And so at this point, I just kind of want to just talk a little bit about this purchase and maybe hopefully encourage you to, maybe try, looking into what it takes to buy your first property. If you haven't already, or if you're exploring it too, or like I said, just want to put yourself in a position to do that. But without further ado, I want to go ahead and just talk about today's sponsor, which is yours truly, again, Traza Design, which is my architectural design company. A little shameless plug here. We do architectural renovations for residential and for commercial properties. We provide 3D renderings, much like this background that I have here behind us, and we help a lot of people, which is fantastic. So if you want to know more about that information, just visit our website, www.traza.design, and I'd be happy to see if I can help you guys out. All right, so let's dive in to this project, into this story here. So what we have here is a house that I ended up buying with my wife, and it's a funny kind of story about this, but we heard a little bit about this loan program, and if people are unfamiliar with the FHA program, FHA stands for First Time Home Buyer, although it doesn't need to be your first house in order to buy it, just FYI. But the First Time Home Buyer Association will provide up to 97.5, I think what is, right? 96.5% of the loan, right? So they will come up with a bulk part of your loan, and you have to come up out of pocket 3.5% of the loan, whatever that loan amount is. And so, sometimes 3.5% is too much for people, right? Depending on how much the house is worth or for sale for, that may be $10,000, right? That you got to come out of pocket for a down payment. And I think a lot of people don't feel that they're ready for that type of commitment. Now, so I just want to talk to you about this circumstance because, just as the title suggests, we came out of pocket about $1,500 before I got the keys to this property, which is like, really, really exciting. And I just kind of want to just throw this out there because, let me just see here. Here we are, Michaela and I, on the day of the closing back in 2015. We signed the documents. I got the keys, and at this point in time, I only spent $1,500 or around there, right? Give or take a couple dollars. And so, what ended up happening is that here in Rhode Island, there was an additional program called the Grad Grant Program. And so if you're not in Rhode Island, I encourage you to research what's available in your state. But here, at the time frame when we bought this house, it's called the Grad Grant Program. And they basically said, hey, look, people who are graduating college, we realize that you are moving out of state. We want to make it so that you feel, impelled to stay, in Rhode Island and use your educational skill set for Rhode Island, for the benefit of Rhode Island. So they said, hey, look, we'll give you $7,500 towards your down payment. And so, that got my gears turning. I'm like, okay, well, wait a minute. If the numbers make sense, you got FHA covering 97.5% of this loan, and what's left over, you're saying you're going to give me $7,500 towards? I'm like, okay, well, theoretically, and I had to call around and ask this question. I was like, would I have potentially a free house if I can get my down payment under this number. And so, I started asking questions. I started calling, a loan officer and asked them, hey, look, is this grad grant program like real? And if so, like, how do I figure this out? How do I apply? And so, they kind of started walking me down to that step. And so the reason why I kind of suggest this, and I know some people may be thinking, it's like, well, okay, that was back then, and that program doesn't exist. And partly true, right? So back then, this is a $7,500 max, offer, grant that they're offering. And this is back in 2015, 2016 when I bought this house. But now they have it again. Okay, it's not called the Grad Grant program. It's called the 10K loan assistance, something like that, right? And it's literally right now. So 2021, I'm recording this December 20th, 2021, and there are some people that I know right now that want to buy a house and that haven't felt confident enough to just pick up the phone or do some research. And so I'm telling you right now, you could take advantage of free $10,000 towards your down payment of a FHA loan house. Okay, so you do the math, you could probably get a free house. Obviously, the sales climate is kind of interesting right now, but the math is there. So let's take it back to my story. Like I said, it's very similar. And so what I did is, my wife and I, right, we did the math on, what kind of down payment under $7,500 would give us how much house, and so I believe the math was about like $210,000. So like as long as the house purchase that we found was under $210,000, we know that the grant that they'll give us will cover the entire deposit that we need to come up with. And so that was the theory at the time. It's like, now we gotta find a house. And so up goes the hunt on finding a house at this point. And so we're going over here and we're looking at different houses and we're trying to figure out what is the best type of house we can get. And this goes back to location. And I can't stress this enough. As an architectural designer, I think the house can always be improved. Okay, and seeing as I live in a state like Rhode Island, which is older, we have a lot of 100-year-old houses. There are a lot of houses that need to be improved. Okay, so where you're gonna buy is probably a house that could be improved. Okay, so let's just take that off the table right then and there. The next thing you got to consider is like what neighborhood has the best opportunity of potential growth over the next 10, 20 years, right? Again, if you're around my age, I'm about to be 30 years old. We have to think 20 years down the line, right? 20, 30 years. Where are we going to be at that point? Where's the house going to be at that point if we plan on long-term investment? And so for us, we found the location. We found the right location, and it was just a matter of finding a house that came up for sale in this location. And so I think a lot of people kind of like skirt past that, but if you buy a house in the wrong location, you might struggle to find good tenants, resale value, things like that. And I get it. Property is property, so they won't really depreciate. They'll appreciate, which is good, but understand that there are certain locations that will appreciate much, much faster just because it's in a certain spot. So might as well prioritize that first. And so for us, I was looking to be a landlord. And again, that might be another thing that is not for everybody. And I just want to make mention real quick before I continue the rest of the story is if you have a question or a comment, go ahead. Please leave that down below. I'm taking a look at the chat right now to see if there are any questions along the way. But needless to say, let's kind of go right in. So we found a house in the location that we were looking for, and through the pictures that we found on the posting, it was very much like simple, like blah, but it was like clean. There was pictures of every room. There was very like it seemed like a clean purchase here. Now, mind you, Michaela and I, we were on the way to Canada to visit family when we saw it. Like, it came up for sale like while I was in the car, and so immediately I'm looking at the pictures. I'm like, whoa, Michaela, it's in the neighborhood that we wanted. It's in the price point we wanted at. And there's 2 units. There's enough beds and bathrooms and like a nice little yard. Like anything else can be renovated. Like anything else can be renovated, right? And so, like seriously, like Michaela and I at that point we went to go visit like 6-7 houses, so we were able to visibly see what we like and what we don't like. But we both agreed that this is a house worth like putting an offer in, like sight unseen. And so, quite literally, while we were like crossing the border into Canada, I called my real estate agent to put an offer in this house, and to have like my father or somebody that, like I said, I know, see the house to make sure it's like actually there in person. But this is the ad that I saw, right? $180,000 purchase price. 6 parking spaces, which is like overkill, honestly. 2 units, 4-bed, 2-bath, which means there's 2 units inside the space. And so it's huge, man. And so we, fast forward, we returned from Canada, and we start to walk around the property. And so let me just show you some pictures. But this is kind of like the first time I'm like walking through, and driving by the house to see like, okay, what does it look like? What am I up against? And it's a small house. It's it's a 2-unit building in this neighborhood where there's typically a lot of single family, and then if there is multifamily, the multifamilies are like giant 3-story apartments. But the house was so it was simple, but it reminded me like of a car that's like untouched, like an untouched car. Like as a car guy, if you want to buy a car and modify it, you'd rather start with the car that's not modified, so that you can do all the modifications and you know what it's up against. So this reminds me of that house. It was a stock house, and again, as a designer, I can see the potential here. And in fact, this is an old picture, but shout out to any of my old subscribers that recognize this car. This is Camel Red. So this is way back in the day, okay? But this is funny. But you can actually get a good glimpse of this large driveway that I had here. It fits 6 cars in this driveway, which is like entirely overkill, right? 4-bed house, 6 car parking lot. It's too much. You're gonna have empty space, and it's crazy because we had this weird, awkward backyard, which like made 0 sense. However, I don't see this as like what it is. Again, as a designer, I'm looking at all the possibilities that can come from this type of arrangement. So let me just kind of swipe through the photos a little bit. Like I said, this is the first time we're really looking at the house. And what I do when I go through properties is I snap pictures. Every time I look at a room, I just snap pictures and just kind of keep it moving. But yeah, this is first floor. This is very simple kind of layout. A little bit outdated here at this point. This is the second floor. That is a gas on gas stove. Okay, I learned what that was right then and there. I'm like, what the heck is this? But apparently back in the old days, right, if you're unfamiliar with the gas on gas stove, is that you can use a portion of the stove for cooking, and then the other portion was used to heat the house. So on the right hand side, see where that door is right there? There's literally vents on the side, and that was the source of heat for the entire house. It's crazy. It was absolutely crazy. I could not wait to get rid of that thing once I saw it, because this was actually our apartment. Michaela and I, we moved into this unit right here, which was the lesser of the two at the time. But yeah, this was kind of what we're looking at. This is the first couple photos that we looked at here, and this is I do this. It's so funny when I'm looking at a house and I make my way to the bathroom to check that out. I always do this awkward selfie in the mirror, so that's my awkward selfie for this house. Too funny. But yeah, so here we go. We're going through. This is a lot of the houses. This is the front staircase. Very clean house, man. You can see where I'm like, yo, I had to jump on this. And so, all right, so that's the end of that. But let me just go ahead and jump into this next photo. So what ended up happening was we bought the house, okay, and I was able to rent it out, right, after I made these modifications. So made a lot of improvements, and I could probably break down the improvements in a whole separate video of how I got into that. But just to kind of show you a quick, snapshot of what this ended up being, we ended up really making improvements once we moved into the space. Painted the walls, we dressed it up, and we lived in this house for a couple of years, which was great. It worked out fantastic. The location was awesome. Okay, location was spectacular in this house, and it served a really good need. But like I said, so I want to just kind of take a step back now that I'm showing you some of this property, is back to the numbers, right? So we ended up closing on this house, and we had to come out of pocket a couple of things, right? So we had to buy the home inspection, we had to pay for an appraisal, and then because the seller, there was like this blanket statement where the seller would contribute $5,000 towards the closing costs. And I would, when my agent said that, like, oh yeah, we'll negotiate that in. The seller has to put in $5,000 towards closing, and I was like, well, why can't we just make it so that the seller cover like all the closing, whatever it is? If it's $5,000 and $100, can they just cover the entire? Why do you have to specify what that number is if you don't know what that number is? Anyways, what ended up happening is that I had to come out of pocket $900 because the closing cost was $5,900. So that $900 difference, I had to write a check for. But anyways, I had the keys in my hand, Michaela and I, for a grand total of about $1,500. And so that was, the appraisal, the home inspection, and the difference of the closing cost. And what ended up happening was I didn't have to pay that first month's rent because mortgage, they give you kind of like a month grace period. And so what that translates to is to now a $1,250 mortgage payment. Okay, and I wish I had kind of a whiteboard to show you guys a little bit, I do have a whiteboard, but I wish this was kind of set up a little bit easier to show the numbers. But $1,250 mortgage payment for a 2-unit house. Okay, so that means if I were to rent the other unit, which I fully plan on doing, then whatever I rent that unit for, I only have to come up with a difference. Okay. So those numbers are the most important numbers you can think of, and honestly, like at this point in my life, the best thing I could do is to keep my expenses down. And so I'm coming from living in a loft that used to be roughly $1,200, not for nothing, $1,200 for rent, in this loft, which was over what we should have been paying at the time. Michaela and I did it because we were young, we had no kids, and we wanted to experience something really cool as for an apartment, and I'm glad we did it. But there were times where we were in the red. It was hard for us to come up with that payment, and so I'm glad we made this purchase, because it was on one hand it was a sacrifice because we were apartment living. Even though we owned the whole house, we were apartment living. Okay, so that comes with all the other stuff, right? But it allowed us to keep money back in our pocket, So here we are, going from a $1,200 rent to now, after I rented this house, we're going from $1,200 of spending to about $500 in spending, right? So because again, the rent from the other unit is paying, a large majority of the mortgage. So that $700 difference was able to be saved, right? What we started doing is started to, grow our savings account, started to put now we own a house, so there's things, okay? So there's a lot of things we had to pay for, don't get me wrong. But needless to say, we have like a monthly income coming from this house that we can do what we want with. Now, that may be saving, that may be paying down debt, that may be going on vacation, that may be investing into other stuff, like things like that. It started introducing me into like this whole world of like, whoa, wait a minute, I see what people are saying. This real estate stuff is no joke. And so, slightly and slowly I started becoming like super obsessed on how this works. But let me just kind of keep showing you through some of these pictures here. This is our bedroom and our living room. With our IKEA furniture. It's the only thing that fit in this apartment, by the way. But we made use out of it. This is fantastic for for a house here in Rhode Island. Like, this is great. I turned the front staircase, which was kind of an exclusive, like, second floor apartment staircase, turned this into an office, right? This is where I worked from home. This is where I made YouTube videos. This is back when I still did YouTube. I worked out of here, which was fantastic. I had my whiteboard. I had a little baby gate because, again, we did also start having kids at this house, so I don't want my kids to fall down the stairs. But I totally made use of every square foot in this house, which is true to what I do with my clients, anyways, as well. But you can see how I did that desk there. It's kind of cantilever setup, which worked out perfect. Worked out absolutely perfect. In fact, I rent this apartment just like this. I go through this, and in fact, I believe my tenant uses this setup for their office, or at least for storage in this demeanor. But it's funny it's funny what you can do, to get creative in these little things. One thing I wanted to point out is that as soon as we started to look at this house and consider, what the potential was, I started designing immediately. Like, okay, what can I do with this house? And so I just wanted to share with you a couple of sketches that I did on Google SketchUp it's called, just to get an idea of what I can do. And so here I recreated the house, and I'm like, okay, I want a garage. Can I put a garage here? Let's see what the garage looks like. And so there you got the 3-car garage in the back, just to see, okay, what's left over once we do that. What if we vault the ceilings and change the roof, and do something cool up there, to collect solar, right? Like, I think there's a picture of the solar here. Yeah, solar panels. I'm like, what can we do here? So this is, my mind, goes like a mile a minute, and I start to think of all the possibilities. And this was what helped me actually figure out that I wanted to move forward with this house, because if I believe that this location is awesome, right, then I also believe that in 10, 20 years, this location will yield, a higher demand on quality of house and higher rent demand, right? And so you got to look at the business side of things of when it comes to of buying a house. And because we chose to go multifamily for this route, that meant I need to think about what this investment looks like in the future and when I move out. And so that was our plan. Let me just go back to these photos really quick. Our plan was to, move out eventually. And, if we did move out, then we could rent our personal unit and then profit completely from this house. And so we just recently moved out of this house. We bought a new house about a year ago, actually over a year ago now at this point. And we were able to generate, a hefty, nice little profit, monthly that gets produced from this house that we can then carry over to our next mortgage. And so because of the profit that we receive from this house, we are paying about half the mortgage that we would be paying on our single family house. And so it was the greatest decision that we've ever done and sacrifice to use our FHA, use our down payment assistance into a multi-family house, and I just encourage that big time. I know, like I said, I say that, and also state that not everybody is a landlord and can be a landlord or should be a landlord. But if you feel that you can, then I encourage you to do so because the numbers just make sense. Like I said, because I'm able to profit from this house, now it's purely an investment property at this point. I can take that money and to help me out with these other things, other areas of life other ventures in life. It may be awarding me, financial, I would say, comfort when it comes to starting a business, right? So I'm a small business owner, architectural design. There's a lot of, growth that comes into starting a business. And so having this passive income from this real estate is quite beneficial. And so I just find it astonishing that we were able to do it, again, for just about $1,500 out of pocket. And I know this now that it's still there, it's still available. I have a buddy that's closing on a house in a couple of days, and his down payment, just a quickie on that, was $12,000 for the house that he just bought, and the down payment assistance came in at $10,000. So his difference that he's paying is $2,000, right? So for $2,000, he's going to get himself into a multifamily that's going to make it so that he's only coming out of pocket a couple $100 a month. And so you got to look at the monthly cash flow of these things, and realize the long-term gain from that. And it takes you know, a certain characteristics. I'm going to be honest, a lot of discipline, you know, a lot of financial education. You know, if you don't know something, like, ask these questions, man. There's people in your circle that know these questions, and you got to tap into that. You have to tap into that, because it's going to benefit you in the long run. And it's funny because I'm talking to you guys like if I know you guys personally, and I probably do. But you know, if you guys know me on a personal level, I love having this kind of conversation with people, because it ultimately starts to benefit your life, which makes it so that it benefits the people's lives around you. And so, like, it's just this kind of like shared pool of knowledge, that is always accessible. You know, gone are the days where people didn't know how to, you know, figure things out. You know, we live in a world of Google, of YouTube. I call this YTU, YouTube University is what me and my friends call it. And because there's so many things I learned, from just watching YouTube videos, watching other guys, like this, you know, just talk about properties that they purchased, right? Biggerpockets.com, you know, podcasts, things like that, where I learned a ton of information. But yeah, man, that's kind of like this house in a nutshell. I felt, you know, like I said, excited to kind of talk about this one because, you know, this was such a success. You know, whereas, you know, my wife and I whiteboarded this process, you know, before jumping into something like this, we conceptualized through this plan. In fact, our plan was to buy another multifamily strictly under her name, so that we can go through the same process again. But then we had kids, and that kind of changed the plan a little bit. But it's important to just conceptualize through these ideas and to figure out, you know, like, how can we figure out how to invest in a way that makes it so that we don't have to work as hard. We don't want to work this hard for money, you know? And so, like, you know, it takes effort to move in this fashion, but you always have to think about the long-term, you know, projection of where you want to be. And so, yeah, I wanted to kind of leave you with that. I wanted to, you know, kind of show some of the real estate side of my life. There's other properties, like I said, there's other details. This house specifically went through a lot of, you know, iterations and, you know, kind of improving. Like, we bought this house and didn't realize it, but it had knob and tube wiring that we had to upgrade. We had to figure out the heating. Actually, this is a good image where the gas stove used to be. We replaced that. And installed the split unit system inside this house. So now, like, this unit has central air, and since it's such a small apartment, it's a 2-bed, 1-bath. It heats up so fast, it cools down so fast. So, like, the efficiency coming out of this unit is phenomenal, right? You know, whoever lives here only has to pay about like $90, like less than $100, but way less than $100 to heat and cool this place all year round. And so it's awesome because it's saving people money. It's a win-win. But yeah, so very exciting stuff. I like to kind of dive into this information on my personal social medias as well. Feel free to follow me on Instagram. I like being on Instagram, IG story and whatnot. And so you can follow me there, JerryB_. And or you can find the link below on this video. Yeah, stay tuned. I try to do this every Monday at 2 p.m. I try to talk about a different segment, whether it's design, real estate properties, sustainable architecture. I think next week I'll be jumping into a segment regarding solar panels because I just installed some solar panels at my current house here. And so I kind of want to talk about that process because that installation is going to allow me to save some money monthly, right? And so for me, it's all about the monthly cash flow. You know, how can you save or make more money per month on a reoccurring basis, and that's what it comes down to. And I've been seeing how it's been benefiting me, so I'm going to keep diving into that. And I also see how, you know, many of my friends that are ahead of me are able to, you know, find the time in their life to become financially free. And because it all starts with this. So I'm chasing this kind of financial freedom, and I'm hoping that this channel could be a source to kind of document that process in my life, and also to help you know, share that with any, you know, people that are tagging along. So like I said, thank you again for tuning in. I'm going to end this stream, and we'll do this again next week. So I'll see you guys. Appreciate it. Peace out.